welcome to Cooler Than Homework, a Disney Channel original movie podcast. I'm Nicole Sweeney, and my theater snack of choice had to really stretch my memory to recall. But if I'm being really indulgent, nachos.
Ooh. I'm Matthew Gatos, and my favorite theater-going snack of choice is just plain old popcorn.
My name is Marines, and I am also a popcorn gal, but I pair that up with snow caps or some other like chocolate treat because I like the salty and sweet together.
And I'm Ceri, and I feel like I also had to rack my brain for this one, but Bunch of Crunch has this solidified place in my mind as like we would only get it from Walgreens and then smuggle it into the theater.
Classic.
I also mentally associate Bunch of Crunch as a movie theater. Like, I accept that it can be consumed elsewhere, but my brain is like, no, that's in a movie theater.
Yes.
That's what
that
snow caps are. Snow caps are exclusively like movie theater candy.
Yes. Yeah. Never had it outside of those walls, honestly.
Yeah. Like it would feel wrong to eat a handful of Bunch of Crunch in my home.
I do like that, like places like Walgreens and stuff now have that like dollar candy section that they just know. Like, that's what you're here for. You're here for the movie, like, smuggling candy. And they're like, yeah, just, it's all over there. It's all very conveniently placed. Grab it and go.
Yeah. Especially at the, like, Walgreens locations that are right next door to a movie theater. You're like, that's what we're here for. Well, what we are here for now is talking about Phantom of the Megaplex. And it's a Megaplex. That's why we did that. Mari is now going to tell us what the plot of this movie is.
I feel like we have definitely watched like Stranger DComs, but for some reason this was one of the more difficult plot synopses to put together. And I guess we'll talk about like how that plays while we're watching. It might be because so many things were happening like interspersed into all of it. So like, I don't know. Here's my best shot. So we start the movie with our main character who is 17-year-old Pete Riley. And he's basically introducing us to this Megaplex where he works as an assistant manager. There was originally a theater on the site, but it was demolished to make way for the Megaplex. And the urban legend is that someone got trapped during the demolition, becoming the Phantom of the Megaplex. So Pete introduces us to the rest of the staff of the Megaplex, including Sean McGibbon, who's the senior manager, and Movie Mason, who's an old man who doesn't technically work at the Megaplex, but used to work at the old theater. And now he spends his days pretending he works there and just kind of greeting people and hanging out. So the staff is all working to get ready for a big movie premiere, like a Hollywood movie premiere that is happening at this Megaplex. And the movie's Midnight Mayhem. It's a weird thing that is happening, and it's mostly explained away by the movie, by the fact that that Midnight Mayhem was filmed nearby, and the movie's star grew up in this town and grew up attending the old theater. So the owner of the Megaplex will also be in attendance at the premiere, and is of course putting a lot of pressure on Sean, the senior manager, to make sure that everything goes smoothly and perfectly. He also passes Sean up for a promotion to general manager in favor of his son-in-law. And this is news he like unceremoniously dumps on Sean like in the middle of the day in between his demands that everything go perfectly. So a lot goes wrong in this movie. And, you know, we can talk about who's to blame, but I think it all goes back to this moment of the owner of the movie needing an HR department. But also, I'm an HR lady, so I'm a little bit biased here. Meanwhile, while all of this is happening, Pete's mom, and I'm stealing Matt's thunder here a little bit, but she's Leanne Mars from Veronica Mars. And this is not the first time we've seen her, but also I cannot see her and not be like, oh,
she's
look.
Mama Mars.
That's her. So she's preparing for a date. So she's making Pete's younger sister Karen babysit their younger brother Brian. Karen wants to watch a PG-13 movie with her friends, but her mom doesn't want her to see that movie anyway because it's a scary movie. But anyways, she can't because she has to babysit her brother. And the compromise is that Karen can take Brian to see the movie he wants to see, and Pete can drive them both home on his dinner break. That night, Pete gets his siblings settled into the movie, but Karen promptly ditches Brian to go watch the scary movie with her friends anyway. And in the lead up to the premiere, the other movies all start experiencing weird mishaps, and they're mishaps that are like theme to whatever the movie is about. So in a movie that has glimpses in the title, like the projector starts glitching, lights start flickering. In another theater, there's like a tornado movie and there's some sort of super industrial fan that like blows everyone away. I don't know how strong this fan has to be, but it happens. Go with it. You know, other things start happening around the theater too. The popcorn maker starts freaking out. So things are just not going well. At first, Pete is annoyed that his siblings keep getting involved with the troubles in the theater, especially because the whole like dynamic that they set up is that the little kids like love movies and are young and carefree, and Pete is very serious about working and making money, but he figures that they've spent enough time watching a lot of movies that maybe they can help him figure out what's happening at the theater. Throughout all of this, Sean is sort of like disappearing also, so like Pete has to deal with a lot of it by himself, and Pete finds Sean like tied up and like, I don't know, kidnapped by the Phantom, who is causing all of these problems a couple of times. And at first, Sean suspects Movie Mason of being the Phantom because earlier in the night, Sean temporarily hires him as a ticket taker because they were understaffed, but then he promptly fires him because Movie Mason was spending too much time judging people's movie taste and not taking tickets. So he's like, oh, clearly Movie Mason is the one who's like sabotaging us. Then they suspect it's Merle, who's the projector guy, because he's overworked and underappreciated, a big mood. And then but we see like a few Phantom sightings, and like it can't be Merle because they see the Phantom when they're with Merle. So they figure out that it is neither of those two suspects. Finally, it's premiere time and things are still not running smoothly. Like the Hollywood types are here and they're annoyed because they've had to be waiting. And then the owner of the theater shows up and the balloon drop balloons are all replaced with water balloons. So people get soaked and it is just not going well. But they usher everybody into the theater for the final like premiere of the movie. And the kids are trying to figure out like how the Phantom is going to sabotage this final thing. And so they look up spoilers on the internet for the movie and they don't actually figure out. They end up like making it back to the theater just in time. The Phantom briefly like also ties them up and kidnaps them. Not kidnaps, I don't know. He just like restrains them, but they manage to escape that. And the Riley kids all make it to the theater in time to see that the final sabotage is that like these large inflatable monster animals or whatever, like, I don't know, the kind that they were using to promote the movie are now being inflated inside of the theater. And so people are crowded by these inflatable animals. I don't know. I don't actually.
The stakes were high. They were crowded.
Yeah. They were crowded. Yeah, I was trying to figure out, like, I mean, it would not be comfortable, but the amount of, like, blood-curdling screams that we get from people as this is happening, I'm like, what's happening?
Listen, this movie was ahead of its time because we are now living in the moment where being crowded would indeed terrify.
That is true. That is true. But at the last minute, Pete kind of comes in to save the day. He punctures, like he pokes the giant inflatable and that goes down. And then he also sees the Phantom like lurking behind the theater screen. So he goes and confronts them. And there's this whole like behind the screen showdown. So the people in the theater are watching it like backlit and in shadow. So he finally manages to take the guy down and unmask him. And it is Sean, the disgruntled employee. Because of course it is. So he basically gives his whole like, you never noticed me thing to the owner of the theater. And I don't know, it just ends on this note of like, well, I'm not arresting you because we've got a premiere to go to. And then Sean just is like, harumph. And maybe the famous Hollywood director is like, I want to make a movie of your life. And that kind of seems to be all the consequences that he gets. And then Leanne Mars's boyfriend proposes to her. And Pete learns the very important lesson that life is not all about making money, but sometimes you have to have fun. And then they all go and watch the premiere together. The end.
Before we talk about this movie, Matt is going to tell us where the cast of this movie is now, or I guess what they've been up to in the 20 years since this movie came out.
So we can start off with Corinne Bower, plays the mom, Julie Riley. As mentioned, we've seen her before. She was in Under Wraps, and people might know her from a bunch of things like Criminal Minds and Veronica Mars.
Veronica Mars.
Veronica Mars, that's the one.
I feel like there's been a lot of crossover with Veronica Mars through these DCOMs, and it is not a show that I have seen, but it is a show that I know that like at least two of you have seen. So I know that it's like the crossover is important to the other people, but it never registers for me.
The thing is that Veronica Mars is the first show that I ever like actively rewatched, like made my way through multiple times. And so somebody who was in a scene on that show, I'll see them later and be like, oh yeah, that's the person who sold Veronica pizza. Like part of the consistent crossover as that. I feel like a lot of the people who are, just in general, like working actors who are who have a ton of credits, we're just more likely to identify these people for just because it's a show that half of us have seen and know quite well.
This is a total aside, but this is how I feel about James McAvoy, who is Mr. Tumnus from the Chronicles of Narnia, and that is like the least of his roles. But every time I see it, I'm like, Mr. Tumnus.
Mr. Tumnus, what are you doing in the X-Men?
What you doing here, boy?
Next up is Jacob Smith, who plays Brian Riley, the little 10-year-old brother in the movie who says sabotage a lot. He went on to be in the Cheaper by the Dozen movies, and nowadays has a transphobic Ben Shapiro video on his Instagram. So we're going to say fuck that guy and move on.
Fuck that guy.
Bad.
You hate to see it.
that was a real bummer to see. Next up on the list, we have Mickey Rooney, who played Movie Mason. Going through Mickey Rooney's 342 IMDb credits would take, a long time. So I'm not going to do that. But you might remember him from his very offensive role in Breakfast at Tiffany's, or later in life as a security guard in Night at the Museum, or classic films like It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, or just, again, 342 credits. You've probably seen the man in something because he was a child star in like the 20s and then kept acting up until he died in 2014 at the age of 93. So for most of your life and most of your parents' life, this man was on screen somewhere.
I mean, all of my parents, 1920s. Matt, how old do you think our parents are? My grandparents, he was on screen for all of my grandparents' lives as well.
I mean, to be fair, I don't know exactly when he started acting, but I know it was a long time ago.
Okay.
Because I know he was a child star with like Shirley Temple and stuff, so...
Oh, interesting. I know nothing about this man as per usual, but I know that he's in a song on Animaniacs, like the cartoon.
Yeah.
When Yakko is singing about how big the universe is, and he rhymes something with Mickey Rooney, the word puny or something like that. I looked it up after I watched the movie because I was like, do I know this man's name? I do. But that's it. I had no idea what he looked like. I could not have told you that he was the old man in this movie. I was like, maybe he's the movie mogul? Like who would they cast as a vaguely famous person? I don't know. So thank you for this clarification.
Yeah. He is definitely like probably has a super long Wikipedia page. I looked up when he started acting. His first role was in 1926 at age 6. And then
Wild.
Yeah. Has acted with everyone and in any kind of movie you can possibly imagine. So yeah, Mickey Rooney is definitely one of those sort of like multi-generational stars who, again, parents, grandparents, everyone except for people who are children now would probably recognize.
Or at least have seen something that he's in, even if you
Right.
don't recognize him
Right.
yourself.
Right. Like, I think like most recently, like Night at the Museum, like those movies. And then he was in the Jason Segel Muppet movie that came out years ago. Like he's literally in it for like 3 seconds and he just sings one line in a song as if it's just like hey look, we got Mickey Rooney here for a few days. Next up we have Caitlyn Wachs, who plays Karen Riley, Pete's 13-year-old sister. She did a number of dog movies in the 90s and early 2000s. She was in Air Bud 3, My Dog Skip, and Shiloh 2. It's not really that fascinating, but I thought it was weird and interesting.
Just went into dog movies briefly and then was like, all right, I'm done.
She was also in Air Bud insert number here, subtitle 7th Inning Fetch, which is, all right.
It lists that as a video, not there's a clarification that that's video, not movie. Why? I don't why the parentheses video on that one? I'm so confused.
Yeah.
Does that mean it was straight to home movie? Is that, which, yes, obviously, Airbud insert number here.
It didn't get the big Hollywood premiere for 7th Inning Fetch.
I'm just so confused by that distinction. I've never seen that on an IMDb page.
They really want you to know. This is kind of a movie. It's probably 17 minutes long or something. They're like, we didn't have a full fleshed out idea. Here's a short video for you. She continued acting a little bit after Phantom of the Megaplex, but wasn't in a ton of things. Her last role was in the parody movie The Hungover Games, which came out in 2014, which was in that span of time where there was the scary movies spawned all of these really, really horrible superhero movie, The Hungover Games, all these very bad, just bad in every sense of every word, parody movies. And she plays some version of a Ceri character, from the movie Carrie. And her character's name is Scary.
Wow.
I think that's the joke.
Inspired.
That's the whole joke.
I watched the trailer for that movie, and I don't even recommend watching the trailer for The Hungover Games. Because it's exactly what you think. It's the men from The Hangover if they were in the Hunger Games. End of joke.
Every time I saw a trailer for any of those movies, it was I hate that this exists.
Well, and they always had one famous enough person where you're like, yes. Oh man, how'd they get you? I remember Allison Hannigan was in Date Movie or something, and I this was around the time of How I Met Your Mother, and I was like, how'd they talk you into this? Don't.
You're better than this, Allison.
Yeah, don't do Date Movie. But yeah, nowadays, she doesn't seem to be acting, according to her Instagram, which is where I do most of my research. She looks to be living a fairly normal life. Her Instagram seems to be very focused on Blogilates and her current fitness journey, so, good for her. I have a separate subject section here that's lightning round of just people that are either kind of acting, not really acting, but I couldn't find anything much out about them, so we have one fun fact about some of these people. So we have Ricky Maybe, who played Ricky Leary in this, who is Ricky Rules as a sub name, because obviously everyone needed to have a nickname that only got used in the intro. He is the theater worker who has the rules for everything. He's still acting, writing, and directing, and recently wrote and directed the Joann's Fabrics commercials that starred Phyllis from The Office that were really good, if you saw those. They are very charming and sweet.
Yes. I have seen them.
Yeah.
This coming at a perfect time in Nicole's life.
Truly.
Where Joann's Fabrics couldn't be bigger.
Exactly.
We had JJ Stalker, who plays Mark Jeffries, a.k.a. Question Mark. He is now a commanding officer in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Wow.
Yeah. We have Lisa Ning as Lucy Ling, playing as Lacey Ling, a.k.a. Racy Lacey. There's so many L's happening in that sentence. I'm sorry for anything I just mispronounced. She's the theater worker known for her fast movement. She co-founded a digital agency for nonprofits called Doing Good Digital. So hopefully she's actually, doing good. I took her at her word. The character of Caitlyn, who is the girl that Pete has a crush on, was played by Heather Bertram, and her friend in the movie, who's casted, the character's name is Lisa, a.k.a. Caitlyn's friend, was played by her real-life sister, Jennifer Bertram.
Cool.
Oh, that's nice.
I didn't even mention them in my plot synopsis, so yeah, there was a girl that
yeah,
they had
it seems to be that important to the overall plot.
Yeah, if not for this fun fact that they were sisters, whatever. But.
Oh yeah, that's the most information I have about them, because that's as far as I dug. Because I was like, well, that's kind of interesting, but nothing else was really interesting. Rich Hutchman, who played Sean McGibbon, the disgruntled senior manager of the theater, still acting a lot. You might have seen him in Mad Men and Shameless. And then Daniel DeSanto, who plays Zeke, the theater worker, who really, you only see him tearing tickets and yelling at Movie Mason to do his job, is still acting and was in Mean Girls, which is where we recognized him from when we were watching. And then recently he was in one episode of Schitt's Creek, so he's still out there doing that thing. Again, a lot of these people, a lot of DCOMs of this era, are Canadian and are doing Canadian TV or other Canadian movies and stuff. And last but not least, we have star of the film Pete Riley, or I guess that's the character's name. He is played by Taylor Handley, who is also still acting. After starring in this, he went on to be in the OC, the 2006 remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and more recently he was in Bird Box. And seems like he's just living that actor, dad, California surfer lifestyle that we love to see for our decom boys.
I just had to look up his character in the OC because I saw the name and I was like 90% sure like I recognized the name Oliver Trask as the character. But I had to reconfirm it because, I mean, we'll get to this, but as a child, I had a huge crush on this actor. And I was like, oh, he's so cute. But in my brain that saw the OC saw Oliver Trask and was like, ew, that guy. So I had like a weird like disconnect moment of like, they are the same guy. And indeed, they are the same guy.
My brain did not clock that they were the same guy. Like did not register. So I'm like, I have to sit with that for a minute.
Yes.
Well, that's the end of my segment. So now you can sit with that for a few minutes before we move on.
So before we get into all of our feelings about this movie, and I guess to give me a few minutes to sit with this discovery, we're going to do our nostalgia check. Had you ever seen this movie before watching it for this podcast?
Yep.
Yeah, I just outed myself, but yes, I had watched it a ton.
I am fairly certain that I have never seen this movie before, or if I did, my brain deleted that file.
And absolutely not. There was no file to begin with.
This is a new hard drive we've installed in Ceri.
Yeah. And except kind of like the SD card that I'm using to record these podcast episodes on, it gets erased every couple of months.
Right. It's like, oh, there goes the Lawrence Boys file again. Delete that one.
I won't need that, and then that'll be just the timing of you bringing them up in another movie.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we tell you too, like, Ceri, you'll need this later, and you're like, delete.
Yeah.
I just want to like add in a fake Lawrence brother into one of my recaps sometime, just to be like, oh yeah, you didn't realize that the Lawrence brothers were in this one, Ceri?
Well, I absolutely could not tell you their names. I was like gonna try Jake, Ryan.
Neither one of those are right.
0 for 2.
Charles.
I mean, you're on the track of like basic boy names.
That was all I went for. I had no recollection of you saying them ever.
And our first question, as always, did you like it? Or I guess as we established last time, were you in a good mood when you watched this movie?
I was not, because I set up myself for a very fun Scooby-Doo like romp, which it was. But within the first 5 minutes of the movie, a pet peeve hit, which was introducing a bunch of characters and a bunch of nicknames that I won't remember. I won't know any of these kids' names, and they're so minimally important to the plot that I spent time like trying to go through like my summer camp counselor work brain kicked on, and I was like, okay, maybe I can remember that. One of them's Mark, one of them's Terry, whatever. And I was like trying really hard to remember their names and was like, this is not fun. I'm not having a good time watching this movie. I'm trying to remember the characters' names. And it was all kind of downhill from there because I loved Scooby-Doo growing up. And this was just far too long to get to the villain of the movie. And the unmasking and the lack of consequences.
I felt very similar, especially about that opening pet peeve you're talking about with all the names and nicknames, because like 2 or 3 minutes into the movie, he's still going with this like voiceover introduction of what's happening, who everyone is, the stakes at hand, who he is, and all this stuff. And I like paused it, and I had the thought of, I bet if you delete all of this narration, we would still be able to figure out those things based on just watching the movie. And that's totally true. Like, you don't need him to tell you there's a big Hollywood premiere happening, or that he works too much, or this is this person's personality trait, because we see all of those very clearly acted out throughout the movie in ways that like didn't need to be spelled out. And we especially like don't need the nicknames for people because, like you said, there's no reason to remember most of them. And like, I understand some of them being sort of important to the plot. Like, yeah, having a rule follower, whatever. Having a guy who questions everything, sure. Having somebody who's too fast and runs into you, sure. But like, the girl who just called people sweetie and honey and doll, I'm like, she didn't affect the plot at all with her personality trait. So I didn't understand why that was there. So totally agreed with you there. As far as like liking the movie goes, like looking back, because I had seen this one, I thought I liked it a lot. And I don't know if that's my love of movies or what it was that made me maybe have rose tinted glasses on it, but it kind of ends up very near the middle of what we've watched so far for me, because I've just found it so frustrating and stressful because as Mari alluded to with the plot synopsis, so much is happening in this all at the same time, and you don't really get to care too much about any of it, because it's like, okay, the kids need to be picked up by the mom who maybe wants the boyfriend to propose to her, but then their car breaks down and the restaurant they want to go to is out of business, and then there's a giant fan blowing, and then there's this, and it's just like the movie never like stops to let you breathe. And I like at a certain point I was getting frustrated along with the characters in the movie. I was like, yeah, no, this sucks. Like I'm also mad that you're upset about this, because nothing is going well. Nothing's seeming to work out. And yeah, so I think I was just kind of channeling their stress into my own stress while watching it.
Yes, that was also my experience. So a little background. I was forced to like travel for work last minute. Yes, in a panorama, I am doing that thing. So I was already like, just like stressed from work, and then like I was looking forward to like, okay, I get a decom this weekend, right? I get to sit down and like brain off watch something and be entertained. And it wasn't like entirely not that, but I will say that watching like these kids run around stressed about their jobs like was not the decom that I needed, especially because like Matt is saying, like I was like, yeah, this really sucks. All of you are probably underpaid and nobody is helping you, and oh my gosh, that popcorn machine is overflowing. Like that was the kind of thing that I kept thinking about. So I kept getting distracted by those moments that in the grand scheme of things, like there could have been less of those, less characters, and it really wouldn't have affected the movie overall. But also I just feel like the middle chunk of this movie, it was just such a weird like mix mash, and like I don't know, just like it became this like plot soup throughout the middle that I just was like, I'm following, I guess, but I don't know how much of it matters or how much I care. And then at the end, when we were like getting the resolution, I was like, okay, this is a little bit better. But the middle was really just, yeah, that plot soup wasn't my favorite. So it was like a fine experience, but I remember loving this and rewatching it a lot, and that might all be down to my crush on the main character. So
on who would turn out to be Oliver Trask. Terrible.
Everything is bad.
Everything is bad. I was in a good mood going into the watching of this movie, and I had a perfectly fine time. And usually when I come into this and I'm like, yeah, I liked this. And if you guys didn't like it, that doesn't move me. I was trying to place it on the spreadsheet, right? Like, so I'm currently distracted by this spreadsheet and how I don't remember so many of these movies, even movies that I had seen already. I was like, I don't know. Would I rather watch this over Alley Cat Strike? I don't fucking remember Alley Cat Strike. They bowl?
Yes.
But anyway, so that aside, like my feelings about this movie were just null. All of that to say that I think that I had probably more positive feelings about this movie going into it, but none of them held, because everything that you guys just said, I was like, yes, that's true. That's also true. And I have and I can't, like, sometimes I'm like, no, but okay, that's true, but I loved blah, 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 blah. And I don't feel that way now. My biggest problem with this movie actually isn't the character bloat. It's that the little sister should have been the main character.
Loved her.
She should have been the main character, and I feel that this movie would have been a lot better if she had been the main character. It would have forced us to spend less time thinking about how sad it is that these teenagers are overworked at their shitty job. So like there's that.
Well, that was the thing, is like so much of like the stakes of the film, and in most decoms you're like, okay, what are you going to do to make me root for this 12, 13, 15, 17 in this case year old child in this movie? And this was pretty much just, so he's good at his job. He has a good day at work. That's the stakes. Like, we want him to be promoted, maybe. Like, we are rooting for him, but like, that's what the movie's telling us we should be rooting for. But I never found myself really being on his side. Like, I never really found myself wanting Pete to succeed. I was like, yeah, it sucks that like work is going this way, but if I was you, 17-year-old kid, I would just leave. Like, if that...
Okay, wait, I'm ready. I've thought about it. Here it is. Here's my case for this movie, because at the end of the day, it's not like he thinks that he wants this promotion. He gets the promotion and then he turns it down. And the like truly the most sympathetic character in the movie is Movie Mason is the by far the most sympathetic character in the movie. And he has this whole impassioned speech about that like capitalism is bad for movies. And which means that this is another DCOM that has a hidden capitalism sucks message. And therefore I have to like it at least a little bit. I'm contractually obligated. That's it. That's my whole case. That's all I've got.
That's a strong argument, Nicole. I might move it up a couple.
That is, to be fair, I think if the movie had treated Movie Mason better, I would be on board with that argument, because I do think that like his arguments and him as a character I really enjoy. It's like everything else, which is the majority of everything else, that I don't enjoy as much, because there was just so many sort of like pet peevey things that kept annoying me about the movie throughout that I was just like, yeah, no, I don't like that. I don't like that.
Okay, but the villain is a shitty boss, okay? Like, bad management. Jobs suck. Jobs suck is part of the moral of this movie. I'm really going all in on this now.
But see, I would prefer that if they had gone like even further with that and made Mr. Niedermeyer the bad guy.
Yes. Yes.
Like, make Sean a more sympathetic character of like, oh, yeah, you're the Phantom, but we understand why you're the Phantom because you were treated shittily. And like, instead, it just kind of like deflates at the end. No pun intended, because of the giant balloon lizard. But like the whole plot just kind of like falls flat because like nothing bad happens to anyone. Even the bad guy. Yeah,
yes. The real ending of the movie should be that the big boss man, like when I don't remember anybody's names, when when the main character kid is like, I need a break, the CEO or whatever should have been like, no. And then like that's what actually should have happened. And then he should have just like quit.
Yes.
They should have all walked off and unionized.
Yes. All of those children. They even mention a union at some point, which is weird. But all the kids should have like sympathized with Sean after they realized why he did what he did, and all of the kids should have quit on Mr. Niedermeyer during the midnight premiere.
Right. So here's the thing. Here's why this isn't like bottom of the list for me, like worst of the worst, is because it didn't do anything. There are other movies here where I can look back and be like, man, that sucked. Like, it did a few things that were like actively bad. And here there were things that were traces of good things, like the anti-capitalist message, and like Movie Mason is a really dynamic character if you think about, like, I don't know, he gave me like all sorts of feels about this old man who used to work at the theater there and just keeps showing up like, where's your family, old man? Like, that's what I kept thinking about.
Movies are my family.
Yes, exactly. And he's got this like hidden room in the basement of Don't Go In There of like movie theater props, but none of like all of that is like in flashes, and none of it is given like enough time to actually be interesting. It's just there to remind you like that the stuff around it is not interesting. And then I have to hear this like one character call everybody honey and sweetie, and I'm like, bring back Movie Mason. The stuff that you're saying is good. I'm not arguing with. My argument is that it highlighted the stuff that was less good even more, because we kept going back to that stuff, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, we spent so much time on 1 second snippets of these other characters that were supposed to have personalities of like, oh, there's Scary Terry giving us like the beginning of another scary story. I don't need any of that. Just like, let me hang out with the two younger siblings and their little goofy dynamic. I love conspiracy theory youngest boy running around the movie theater looking for the Phantom and just like making references to movies. That's cute and fun. More so than just all this filler of people I don't care about.
The only thing that annoyed me about the movie reference thing that like what the two little siblings have is that they are forced to reference only fake movies that don't exist. And so they're like referencing like, oh yeah, it's like Tom Smith said in that old Western blah, blah, blah. And you're like, for a second, you're like, is that a real movie? Am I supposed to remember this?
Yes.
But then like some of the titles they throw out and like, oh my God, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is the titles and the posters of the fake movies in this movie theater are so bad that like they don't even bridge into the world of believability for me. And so I think that also like tainted it a little bit. But like anytime they would make a reference, it took me a second to go like, I think, nope, they're referencing a fake thing. So who are they referencing this for? Right. Like I like the personality trait. I didn't like the actual follow through.
That is very interesting to me because it's like the opposite of a pet peeve. It circles around to being incredibly hilarious to me, like things that are so bad, parodies that they're good. Because Riverdale, the TV show, I've stopped watching. Maybe I need to go back and watch because it's going to go way off the rails. But they also have like American Excess and Spiffanies and like random stupid brand names that have lodged themselves in my brain instead of the Lawrence brothers. And so I found the movie references to non-existent movies and the standees quite charming. In fact, yeah, and maybe it was also because I liked the siblings better than pretty much any other character. So I was like, you're cool. I'm going to be charmed by you and not have that critique.
I enjoyed the whatever it was. They kept messing it up as a joke. So I kind of also forget the real one. But it was like University of Death or whatever the horror movie was. Like I enjoyed that one. But like the Farmer Brown Goes to Town movie that the kids were supposed to be going to see was just like a man and a woman sitting in a truck talking. And I'm like, what? This doesn't seem like a movie. Like, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't know what is happening. I don't know what, like, they keep referencing Farmer Brown a bunch of times. And I'm like, I thought it was going to be like an animated film that the kids were going to have to go see. And they go in there and it's just like a farmer in his truck. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's the farmer movie, you know, like all those other farmer movies we know.
Yeah. Well, I just thought I also loved that because, like, imagine being cast as Farmer Brown in this movie. Being like, okay, you're going to be in a movie in this movie and you're just going to have to do some scenes with this truck. You're going to have to tell this woman to, like, wait in the truck. And you'll have to be like, where did all my stuff go in my truck?
That's your entire character.
Yep. Yeah.
I did enjoy the one, like, movie parody I did enjoy because, like, at first it kind of washed over me. And then I realized it was a parody, and I was like, that's pretty good. Was at one point, she offers to take him to go see Power Penguins next weekend if he's good or whatever like that. And then later on, they walk by the poster for Power Penguins, and it's a hockey movie. And I realized, oh, it's Mighty Ducks. It's just Power Penguins. And so that one I enjoyed.
My favorite part of the whole movie, and part of why I feel like this is part of why I'm so confused by this list, is because I think some of these rankings are just based on like it's something like this where like, okay, I made an argument in the episode and I was like, cool, that's what has decided my my opinion of this movie. Or there was one moment that I really enjoyed or really hated, and like that also defines my opinion of it. And the one moment, the thing that is like, I don't know, holding this movie in higher esteem than it deserves is that I laughed like unreasonably. I laughed at the fact that the have you ever heard of spoiler sites on the internet? And I love it. I love it. I love it so much.
Okay, but here's the thing. So like that moment happened and I was like, cool, they're going to use spoilers to figure out like what the last thing is. But they don't figure it out. It just happens. And then they walk into the theater and it was happening. So
they figured it out. They just were not able to stop it.
No, they go up on the roof. They go up on the roof because they find the key and they know that the monsters are missing. They know the spoiler, but they don't piece it together that they're going to use the monster like to... They just go up and they're like, oh, somebody stole the monster. There's never a moment of like, aha, they're going to inflate it and it's going to fill like, so why these pieces? and I know that like this ranking sheet is like total garbage. This ranking sheet that nobody who listens to this podcast has ever heard or like seen, that we reference every week, you know, it's just basically like at this point, we're just like throwing numbers out there to the best of our abilities. But Nicole, the fact that Johnny Tsunami is number 15 on your list and of the Megaplex.
So Phantom of the Megaplex, I keep shuffling around. Johnny Tsunami is another one that that lives badly in my feelings based on there's a specific thing. I fucking hated that dad. That dad made me so mad.
I mean, yes, he was the worst.
I remember why.
He was the worst, but that movie, Phantom of the Megaplex, is not a better movie than Johnny Tsunami. You were so wrong. You're wrong.
By comparison, Johnny Tsunami is number 2 on mine.
Right.
Phantom of the Megaplex is 18.
Yeah, it's number 4 on mine, number 5 on Mari's, and number 15 on Nicole's.
To be fair, part of how this is happening is that I keep movies like this where I'm like, I don't know, this is middling. And so I drag it up and I just put it somewhere and I'm like, okay, would I rather watch this or the movie above or below it? And like, that's it. I'm not looking at anything more or less than that. And so, I would rather rewatch The Other Me. I would rather rewatch this than Ready to Run. And that's the extent of the thought that I put into this.
Yeah, the middle of all of our lists, I think, is a little just a super gray area where, like, some of them I don't remember if I liked it that much or not. Other ones I try to do the exact same thing you did, Nicole, where I'm like, would I rather watch this than Up, Up and Away? I don't really remember, so it falls below it for some reason. So there's not a lot of science to this. So at the end of this whole, like, however hundreds of movies that we're gonna have to watch for this thing, we're gonna have a very inaccurate list, but I think we'll always probably know that The Color of Friendship is the best decom.
Yes. Like, objectively, that one will always be the best decom. I feel like it was while I was dragging this around that I was like, I maybe should start moving some things, but I don't know what I would move.
No.
Like, I can tell that this list feels wrong to me, but like, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't have an excellent memory by any means, but I remember every single gosh darn decom that we've watched. How are you guys forgetting this? I don't understand.
I remember the good and the bad. That's about it.
Exactly.
I remember
yes.
Can of Worms being the worst. So, like, I would like to see something that we watch. I mean, I'm not going to enjoy it, but I would be very interested to see if something we watch in the future can be worse than Can of Worms or Genius.
The thing about, like, those movies down at the bottom is that they've had so long to sit poorly in my feelings is the other thing. Like, and again, because of my, like, weird patchwork memory of this, I remember that I hate Can of Worms more than I remember Can of Worms. That's what I know about Can of Worms.
I've been cursed to remember every single one of these movies. And
I'm so sorry. That's a terrible curse.
Years on, you're going to be like, oh, I don't remember any of this. And I'm going to be like, well, actually, in Can of Worms, you had that one alien that had the weird human lips. Don't you guys remember? And you guys are going to be like, no, Maddie, we don't.
Now that you said it, I do, but I could not have conjured up that image in my own head without you, like, prompting me.
We need to try out something at the end of this podcast, whenever it is. We need to sign you up for decom trivia,
yes,
Mari, and we need to be a team together.
Yes.
And
if
then
we can find a quiz somewhere online and we all take it and see who would do the best, and it would be me.
Like a Sporkle.
Yes. I have no doubt.
You would win, and then it would just be like a race to the bottom among the rest of us. I did tweet the ranking sheet at one point. I don't know how long ago, but it does, a screenshot of it does exist from when we had, 12 movies, when we were 12 movies in. So maybe now that we've spent so much time talking about it, I feel obligated to do it again. So,
and I feel like some people had some feelings about our rankings the last time we posted it. So it'd probably be good to update them on where some of their favorites fall, because I'm sure maybe people love You Lucky Dog.
Yeah, they can let us know. So yeah, I'll put it up on Twitter, and maybe
don't let
post.
us know. Keep that opinion to yourself. Actually,
that opinion we don't want to hear. Other opinions
it's at
are
Kirk
welcome.
Cameron. Weird. I have one other sticking point about Phantom of the Megaplex.
Oh, the movie that we're supposed to be talking about. Okay, sure.
Yeah, that one. Something that, like, I think it was, like, looking back, this is something I thought was in the movie. And then watching it, I was like, oh, that aspect, I just imagined it, was this idea. I would like something slightly believably supernatural to happen, because there's this thing mentioned at the beginning that everyone believes there's a phantom. But then nothing is really said or done about that like makes me believe that people actually believe that. And even like you have Scary Ceri, who's the perfect character to tell stories about this, and she doesn't really do that. And then even when the phantom stuff starts happening, it all feels like pranks that someone could pretty easily pull. And so never for a second was I thinking that this could have been a supernatural thing. And so I think if there would have just been like a little something happen in the first half of the movie that like it's sort of a Scooby-Doo type thing like Ceri predicted, where it seems like there is an actual supernatural phantom and then it's revealed to be the manager, I think I would have liked it slightly more had they gone that route.
I agree. There is something about the way that Scooby-Doo or like kids' mysteries are unraveled that is really pleasing to me. So like, for example, in the tornado movie, there was just a big fan there. And that manager just walked in his phantom costume, stuck it there, turned it on, and then caused the tornado. Like, who knows what other people were doing during that, but like that is the explanation based on him dragging around everything else, like the big fog tube and whatever. But there is something very fun about kids like pulling away curtains and then finding that there's this special effects thing behind the scenes and kind of like slowly unmasking the adult doing the mischief that I feel like was a wasted opportunity here.
Yeah, like all the things that go wrong are things that if anyone was going to do them, the manager is the one with the access to do all these things. And the one that,
he has the keys.
Yeah, like the one that obviously it's near the end, so you're about to find out anyways. But the one that like tips it off is when the water balloons happen, because they mentioned earlier on in the movie that like Pete was going to take care of the balloons. And then somebody's like, oh, don't worry, Sean already did that. Yeah. And so then the water balloons start falling and you're like, oh, okay, so clearly Sean did that because he took care of the balloons. But I just wish there was that something, like I'm fine with Sean being the Phantom, but yeah, I just like you said, the example of the fan, if people are like blowing away and no one knows what's happening, there's just a strong gust of wind coming from behind the screen, for a second we can believe that like, wait, is the movie like merging with real life? What is happening here? But no, it's just a big fan in the corner of the room.
I just want you to know that I have only been half paying attention to this conversation because I've been giving very serious thought to my ranking sheet, and I have moved Johnny Tsunami way up the list. It's still, I still gave it the lowest ranking of the four of us, but I have upgraded Johnny Tsunami considerably. And I do actually remember all of these movies enough that when I really thought about it, I think this is the real problem, is I just don't think about it. With additional minutes of thought, I was listening to the conversation enough that I was like, yeah, that's a good reason that this movie sucks. But I kept feeling like I couldn't move it any lower because I was like, no, I wouldn't. I would rather rewatch this movie than any of these other movies. So this is the thing that I keep coming back to. In spite of this movie's many flaws, it's less bad to me than some of the others.
I will now accept your 13 to my 15 though. Like I feel better about this. We can remain best friends. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, to be clear, me ranking this higher than anybody else this is not me saying that this movie is good. This is me saying that the other movies are bad. That's my point. That's really what this is. Okay, so we need to move along, and it turns out that our spreadsheet is not actually our group discussion topic for this episode. That's clearly a great oversight on our part, and that is what we should have done. However, we decided that we're going to talk about our memorable movie-going experiences. Just, going to take this time to be nostalgic about when we could go to movie theaters.
I've mentioned a time or two in previous conversations that I grew up in a very religious household. So for my mother, it was even worse. She grew up in a very orthodox, Christian, subsect of Christianity. And there were a lot of weird rules of things that she couldn't do, like wear pants or have her ears pierced or go to movie theaters was a thing that they were not allowed to do. They were just not allowed to watch movies. So my mom got out of that. And so we had this weird transition when I was little where I also was not allowed to wear pants for a while. I didn't get my ears pierced until I was 13. And the first movie that I watched in theaters was The Lion King. So I have a very vivid memory of being of going to that and that being my first experience and it being a big deal because my mom was finally letting us go watch it. So we went to go watch The Lion King in theater. It was my first movie ever to see in theater. And, I remember it also because I sobbed because they took me to watch Lion Daddy die in the screen. And I was like, why is this happening? So me sobbing in the theater as Mufasa was dying, it still lives really high key in my memories.
Man, that just reminded me of, this wasn't the one I was bringing to the table to talk about today, but it did remind me of a crying in the theater as a child memory, which was I have the memory of, for some reason, my family taking me to see Jurassic Park when I was, I don't know, 5 or 6, whenever that came out. And I have this memory of, as the T-Rex scene is happening, just being pulled down the aisle out of the theater and looking back over my shoulder and sobbing in fear at the T-Rex.
Now I'm trying to think if I have any sobbing memories at a theater.
The first movie that I ever cried at in a theater was Titanic. I was, I don't know, in 5th grade, I think. That was a big, really, really big moment in my life. One of the first things that came to mind is actually, as it turns out, a bad example because I am not 100% sure what movie it was, but I think it was Hercules. And when Hercules came out, or Hercules, or possibly some other Disney movie, but I'm 82% sure it was Hercules. We got to go see it at a large theater in Hollywood that had, after the movie, there was this carnival isn't the right, a fair, it was all inside, but there were little booths with games and things that you can do. The production of this, it was much more elaborate than just going to see a movie. We saw a movie, but then there was an event that surrounded the movie, and that was super fun and delightful to my, I don't know, 9-year-old self. I think it was Hercules, which I would have been 9.
I got to, this is 2007, the summer of 2007. I was living in California at the time, and my girlfriend at the time was out visiting me, and we were just walking around Hollywood Boulevard doing touristy things. And we were walking up to Grauman's Chinese Theater, and there was a premiere happening there. And we were like, what's happening? And it was for Hot Rod, the Andy Samberg movie. And we're just standing there sort of tourists gaping from across the street, just being what's going on? And somebody starts walking around saying hey, who wants to go to the premiere tonight? Who wants to go see Hot Rod? And so we said, sure, why not? And we took these free passes, and they walked a bunch of us across the street, and in the side of Grauman's Theater, we didn't get to walk the red carpet. We walked in a side door. But when we walk in, we're just in the lobby at a 90-degree angle from where the red carpet comes in. So we walk into this lobby, us Joe Schmoes just coming in off the street, and I see Sarah Silverman and Andy Samberg and Jason Schwartzman and all these celebrities just next to us in the lobby of this theater. And then we get free popcorn and pop and all this stuff, and we just go sit and watch the movie Hot Rod. And it was the weirdest movie-going experience I've had, partially because we're sitting 2 rows behind Jason Schwartzman watching this movie, but also because when you're watching, turns out, a Hollywood premiere with all of the actors and casts in the room, that is the funniest movie and the best movie that anyone has ever seen. Because the moment a name pops up on screen, there's a round of applause. The moment there is a joke, everyone is laughing as loud as they've ever laughed. And it was very strange because I didn't really care for the movie that much, but everyone was laughing like it was the best movie ever. And then afterwards, they funnel us up the main middle aisle of the theater as the stars and producers and all of this people are standing there shaking hands and saying hello to people. So I'm walking up shaking Andy Samberg's hand and shaking Lorne Michaels' hand and all these people where I'm this is weird. I shouldn't be here. This is very strange. I didn't even like your movie that much, but I'm gonna leave now. So that's definitely my most memorable movie-going experience, on top of the fact that I also used to work at a movie theater, so I had lots of connections to this movie, sparking bad memories of that job. But I worked at a movie theater in the Valley during college where I had to cater to a lot of celebrities and occasionally small weird premieres and stuff, and nothing ever as like atrocious as this movie happened, like as far as like bad giant fans going off in the theater. But there were definitely like weird premieres happening where people were very like forceful with like everything must go perfectly. So that brought back some rough memories of working at the movie theater.
I did not work at a movie theater, and but this movie was still very stressful. And I spent this whole time while you were talking trying to think of when the first time I cried at a movie was, and I figured it out. I had to do some Googling. In 1999, when I didn't do the math, 5, Pokemon, the first movie came out, and it like the climax of the movie is this scene where all of the Pokemon are being forced to battle their own clones. Too much explanation to get to that point. But anyway, Ash, the Pokemon trainer, he like jumps in front to protect, I think, his Pikachu, or just to like stop the fighting, and becomes petrified, and like does this ultimate self-sacrifice, and that stops the fighting, and everyone starts like crying, or his Pokemon start crying. And I think, if I remember correctly, I also started sobbing because I was like, this is the end of like my TV show, this thing that I've cared so much about, because I don't know, I was 5. I couldn't predict that where the plot would go and that he'd be okay. And I remember it feeling so freaking devastating. So yeah, that, and then Pokemon 2000 came out the next year, was equally dramatic. And that one was very thrilling because for going to that movie, you got an exclusive Ancient Mew Pokemon card, which I still have. And so it felt very special because you got a prize for going to the movie. And I always really liked it when you would go to a movie and get like a special little figure or a special card or a special token. I don't know why. Yeah. I just like stuff, I guess.
More movies need to come with toys. More movie tickets need to have a free toy with purchase.
Yeah, it made it feel like, because we didn't go to the movies that often, but it made it feel like a very special event. It's like, okay, we're going to this movie, and then we're gonna get popcorn, and we're gonna sneak in our candy, and then we're gonna get a toy. And it's like, wow, what is this place? This magical place that we don't go very often.
The sneaking in candy thing just reminded me of like one of those like movie going experiences where, again, don't remember liking the movie that much. Don't remember anything about going to the movie other than this weird specific thing where I went to the midnight showing of Pirates of the Caribbean 2 when that came out. I like during the trailers and everything, we're like sitting there waiting for it to go on, and like the very first scene starts and it's kind of quiet, and then you just hear one person like crack open a can of something, whether it was like a pop can or a beer can or something, but it's just like quiet scene. You just hear and like there's like a slight reaction from the crowd, like a little bit of like a what just happened, and then like 10 seconds later you hear and somebody else, and then the crowd sort of like murmured a little louder, like, okay, that's kind of funny. And then right as that died down, a third, and the entire crowd loses it. And like in the middle of this movie, no one is paying attention anymore, and everyone's just laughing at the fact that everyone was just waiting for the first person to go, and they're like, all right, I guess I can open mine now.
And now it is time for us to share the lessons that we learned from Phantom of the Megaplex.
I learned that crappy managers are universal.
I learned that when I get older, my love of movies and film snobbery will turn me into an eccentric old man who can just live rent-free in a movie theater.
I learned that if you do a crime, but you do it kind of in a cool way, then a Hollywood producer will whisk you away to stardom.
And I learned that my love of spoilers is maybe actually a day-saving skill. And now, to close out this episode, it is time for Ceri to guess the plot of the next movie. Next time on Cooler Than Homework, we will be watching The Ultimate Christmas Present.
I can't think of anything except for it's like meeting Santa, right? Like some kid really wants to meet Santa, and Santa's a myth, and then they like try to go to the North Pole. They run away from home. They hitchhike there. And then they meet Santa, and that's the ultimate Christmas present, and then they get squirreled away back to their house. But that's also the plot of the Polar Express. So with that in mind, I reserve the right to fully revise my suggestion once I know the tagline.
So the tagline for this movie is Los Angeles, a little sun, a little fun, and this Christmas, a lot of snow.
Oh, well, that's less fun. I bet it's like you don't get snow days in California, I assume. I didn't live there, but it's warm. And at this point, global warming hadn't caused the intense weather swings. So, okay, well, it's a boy. I'm trying to channel back my high school memories or elementary school memories. There was a boy who didn't complete his science fair project, just on the cusp of 13, and really wishing for snow. And then he writes a letter to Santa, thinking it's absolutely ridiculous, and puts it in the mailbox, says, "Dear Santa, what I would like more than anything is for a snow day to cancel school and a white Christmas for my family." And then it becomes maybe like a careful what you wish for kind of story where, oh no, this is me being influenced by what's going on in Texas. It's like no one is prepared for the snow in Los Angeles, and like the schools are canceled and the kids are having a great time, but then the parents are like, we're cold and we don't have winter coats. What do we do? And so then this kid is trying to contact Santa again and take it back and be like, I don't actually want all this snow. Too many blizzards. But Santa's busy because it's coming up to Christmas. And then it ends up with like a face-off between the kid and Santa being like, you were on the naughty list, and so that's why I made your wish go a little sideways, but now did you learn your lesson? And the kid's like, yeah, I'll do my homework next time. And then Santa's like, good. And then Merry Christmas, and then winks and then flies away.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's very good.
Join us next time to find out if that's the plot of the ultimate Christmas present. We would love to hear all of your thoughts about this episode. There will be a post dedicated to this episode at snarksquad.com/decom. I will also include a screenshot of the spreadsheet in that post so you can check in and see how you feel about all of our ratings. And you can leave us a comment telling us your thoughts about how we are ranking things. You can also find us on Twitter at DecomSquad. I am at Sweeney Says.
I am at Matthew Gatos.
You can find me at My Name is Marines.
I'm at C.E. Riley.
This podcast is a Snark Squad production edited by me, transcribed by Mari, and our theme music is by Stephen Chin.